There's a lot of uncertainty in the air at our nation's colleges lately. After the Supreme Court announced yesterday the latest Trump travel ban can go into effect, many international students and students-to-be are wondering how it might affect them. And then there's that tax-cutting plan, the details of which are still shaking out between the House and Senate, which has led to protests on campuses across the country, largely thanks to the possibility that the student loan interest deduction could vanish and tuition waivers given to many graduate students and other school employees would become taxable income. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Lee Pelton. Lee is the president of Emerson College. Good to see you. Richard Doherty is president of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Massachusetts. Rich, it's good to see you. Let me start with you. Beyond this massive wealth transfer, which is indisputable, higher education has clearly been targeted in one or both the House or Senate packages. Why? Is it because you're seen as some bastion of hated liberalism? Why is this focus, a negative focus on higher ed?
I actually think you've just hit on it. I think that this tax bill is an extension of the election, and that those representatives in both Congress and the Senate from the rural and Rust Belt areas have just sort of had it with the elite coastal institutions. If you look at where the impact on some of these proposals is going to be greatest, it's going to be on some of those institutions that just don't resonate politically with the sponsors of the motions.
Let's talk to the president of one of those elite institutions, Lee Pelton. What worries you most? I should have added that they're taxing certain endowments based on a formula. What worries you most about this tax package vis-a-vis your college?
Well, I'm worried about the impact that many of these provisions, as they exist now, will have on our students. And our ability to retain and attract and provide financial aid for students at the low end of the economic ladder.
Can you imagine a student at the low end of the economic ladder not coming because there's no deductibility of up to $2,500 of student tuition? What's the worst impact you can imagine?
Well, let's take the the standard deduction now for individuals and joint filing. Have been increased from 6 to 12, from 12 to 24, and it's the calculation is that 30% of those who now itemize will be reduced to 5%. And
so why do you care about that?
Because it will disincentivize payers to make charitable contributions to colleges and universities, and we thrive on that, and we use that money to provide financial aid and other resources for our students.
So a combination of the reduced ability to provide financial aid with the lack of deductibility. Let me get back to my question now. Can you see that causing some people who would otherwise come, say, I just can't afford this institution, or coming and then making a career choice that would be other than that which they would otherwise make because of the financial burden?
Well, I see, yeah, of course. I mean, the number one factor in students of a certain economic standing to go to a college is the financial aid package, and if we cannot afford to provide financial aid package generously across all sorts of economic and social backgrounds, then yeah, it will.
I want to get to that deduction thing. I mean, the donation thing for a minute. It's funny because about the only part of this that I thought that might help colleges is, this is a trickle-down plan. I mean, it is. The notion that wealthy people and corporations are going to get a ton of extra money, they're going to spend it to create jobs, do a lot of good things, create that sort of thing. Isn't the trickle-down potentially a benefit for private universities, that if there's more money in the pocket of wealthy people who are the primary donors, aren't they more likely to spend it on places like Emerson or Harvard or BC or something like that?
There may be some of that. I'm not sure how much it's going to influence the very large donors who have an affinity to a particular college. They're probably going to give anyway. I think that the concern is that on annual giving, which is what many smaller private colleges rely on, because not everyone is a very large, rich institution. I think that they rely more on those folks who might be incentivized by the charitable deduction. And if they don't end up having to go that route, then the college or any not-for-profit is going to miss out on that donation.
You know, by the way, do you have this whole the grad student thing? Is that an issue for your place or not an issue? This tuition waiver thing. Do you have grad students doing that at Emerson?
We do, but not to the degree that it would be at a large research university.
In a large research university, I mean, this is a disaster. Is it not? These are
Absolutely.
low-wage or no-wage people who potentially could lose.
They would be taxed on $30,000 to $40,000 of a tuition waiver that they get for being a graduate teaching assistant, and they don't have any income to pay the tax with. It's really mean-spirited.
You know, Emerson's he's got a pretty activist student population. The sense I get, despite what I said in the introduction there, President Pelton, I don't see uprisings like I would assume from college. I mean, you see graduate students here, graduate students there, some students. But considering the severity of the impact, are you surprised that there hasn't been a more extreme reaction?
No, because
why?
Because these are very complex issues, and you know, I think if you ask the average person on the street to talk about, you know, what's the difference between the House tax plan, the Senate tax plan, I suspect that you know, maybe 1 out of 100 could tell you. So
they just know that Roy Moore is a child molester. That's about the only they probably know. So you think that may be part of it? Can we switch to another issue, which I assume matters to both of you? This travel ban that was affirmed yesterday, at least temporarily, by the Supreme Court of the United States. We're going to put up the 8 countries that are affected. There are some student exemptions to some of these. Is the major? You have what, roughly 8%? I read of your student body.
Well, 10% undergraduates and about 35% of our graduate
really?
students.
It's that high?
Yes.
So is it these specific countries, or is it the United States becomes a less welcoming place because of the travel ban? What is it that worries people like you about this?
Well, that it does become a less welcoming place. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time talking to graduate students who are from outside of the United States and who have left, have not come back, and so on. So
even if they're not from one of those countries, just because the United States is making a statement.
That is correct.
Are you seeing that?
Just this year, where the New England is the only section of the country that's seen an increase in international students this year over last year.
Why is that?
Because of just what you said. We have been sending out a message to the world: don't come here. You know, we've become very unwelcoming to students and talent around the world, and I think that's absolutely to our future detriment.
Gentlemen, it's good to see you. Lee
Pelton,
Pelton, President of Emerson, thanks so much.
Good
Rich, pleasure to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.